Alright, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another video, and today we're going to be breaking down the second song on my brand new album, Last Goodbyes. The song is called On Your Side. This beat is crazy. I love this high energy track, and I've done a shorter breakdown on my Instagram and TikTok. If you don't follow those, you definitely should. Yeah, just quickly, I'm super proud of this album, like on a genuine note. It was so fun to record, and the whole process of putting it out. And then I had an album release party, having so many people there and playing the whole album for everyone. Truly was one of the best times, and it's got me hooked on the whole process of making songs and putting them out. And having such a cool thing that I'm so proud of that is tangible. Like, it's on Spotify, it's on all streaming platforms. I can go on there, I can listen to it. It's always going to be there. It's just something I feel genuinely driven to do. Yeah, without further ado, let's get straight into the breakdown. All right, so this is the beat. It's actually quite a simple beat, but it has a few key elements from a lot of the other beats I hear and other songs that obviously I'm going to get into right now. So, of course, the first thing I usually start with is the piano. The song is in D sharp minor, and we're going to go into 1/3 beat grid, which is triplets. And I think in previous breakdowns, I've done very similar patterns to this. So it's just a basic arpeggiation where we start on the root. We've got 2 root notes here for a little bit of width. It adds to the epicness and fullness of the piano when you add some bass notes. Even if you do high pass it later to make room for the sub bass, those frequencies that are left over still add a lot, because I read somewhere that your brain still hears the phantom notes, even though you cut out the frequencies, because there are still some left over, as like the harmonics from the lower notes still reside in like the upper frequencies, if that makes sense. Every third beat, we've got the root note, then we got the 5th, root, 5th, root, 5th. All the way up, and then basically it just goes down 2 notes from there. That arpeggiation from the root to the 5th of whichever chord you're using sounds really good, and it's really easy to make as well. And then this like cascading arpeggiation is basically every note down to the F sharp to sort of mirror this melodic descending arpeggiation. And then it goes root, 5th, root, and then 6th, 5th, 3rd, root. So this here is just a D sharp minor triad. We're just filling in the 3rd here. This 6th is for like a little bit of tension towards the end, which I also use up here. So all the notes outside of C sharp, B, and G sharp are all part of the D sharp minor triad. And as you can see, this 2-bar loop is just repeated for 8 bars. And as you can hear, it's got a pretty narrow band EQ on this. That's because I rendered it with halftime, some delay, reverb, and this high pass EQ on to create this render, which is basically the halftime piano of what you just heard. That filter is just automating throughout the song to give space for the other arpeggiations and also the vocal. So a lot of that is for mixing purposes that was made after the fact, after it was recorded. And then I've also got this piano, which is the exact same pattern. It's just pitched up an octave for the chorus to give it more energy. That's layered with the halftime. For effects on that piano, I've got this Grantacular Echo Crystallizer preset on there. And then I've also got 2-bar wide slow MIDI, just to move it back and forth in the headphones very subtly, again, to give it space in the mix. And then the next thing I did was I made this sub bass. This is a serum preset I use. Basic saw wave respace with the sine wave sub. I don't actually remember why I'm using 2 different serum VSTs to do the same serum patch. But basically, it starts on the root note, of course, and then has the same ending of the arpeggiation from the piano. So it sort of follows it for dramatic effect. At the end of every 4 bars, it's the same notes. I've just grabbed the last 3 and then pitched them up an octave to give it a little bit of variation. Boosted the sub-frequencies, turned all the envelopes down on the limiter, and then I've drove the signal into the ceiling to give it a nice distorted sound. And then if you look at the 808 pattern here, it's the exact same thing with the arpeggiation, which I feel like ties the beat all together. The piano, the sub bass, and the 808. The 3 main things in this beat all follow the same sort of theme. They stick on the D sharp, on the root, and then towards the end of the bar, you've got this grand arpeggiation to tie it all together. This is the 808 I use. It's the classic Audi 808. And also for the 808, I've got it panned left and right. because I found it was quite muddy in the mix when it was all centered in the middle. And because the higher notes are less subby, it sounds good to pan them left and right to spread it out, and also moves it out of the stereo field of where the piano is as well, because that's pretty upfront as well. Yeah, while we're in the 808 pattern, it's a very simple trap bounce with a triplet roll at the end of the first 4 bars. That's just the root note up an octave. This is the kick. I've boosted it by 10% to make it louder. The kick just follows a really basic 808 pattern, and also threw a limiter with all the envelopes down. Give it that distortion without peeking into the red. It just plays in the second half of the hook and for the first part of the verse where the sub bass is. The other drums are very simple. The hi-hat pattern, we've got basic 2-step, and then I guess you'd call that 4-step. It's like a note every quarter beat. So that's for the first 2 bars, and then for the second 2 bars, you got a 2-step. And then we've got 2 triplet rolls towards the end, and these ones obviously pitched down. We got this really crispy snare that stands out. It's just doing the really standard snare pattern. And then for the hook, I've got this other snare that's pitched down a little bit for a layer. And also this open hat. The really fast panning helps it stand out. That's also pitched down a little bit. And that just plays in the pockets of the percussion to give it more bounce. So those are pretty much all the sounds that I've covered. Obviously, one thing that I've learned, especially from doing remixes, is automating the master stereo separation. Now, this is the biggest gem I could probably give to you. This little knob here, right-clicking on this bad boy, creating an automation clip, and then going into the parts of the song where you want to change the dynamic, make it sound more mono in parts that have less energy, and then really widen it back out for the hook. Even just looking at it as the song progresses, all the way at the top is at 100% mono. So in the intro, we've got 100% mono. And then for the instrumental cuts as well, we've got it go up. I think that's pretty much to 75% or around that. Again, that gives the beat cuts more emphasis. And when it comes back in, it gives it more impact. Obviously, for the verse, we have it come back up because dynamic is all about relativity. You hear this a lot in terms of volume. Some things only sound loud because other things are quiet. If everything sounds loud with respect to each other, there's no difference, then nothing's going to stand out. It's all going to be mushy and you're not going to have dynamic. Whereas if everything's in stereo all the time, nothing's going to sound as stereo as they could. Is when you could compare to if you put some things in mono or bring the whole thing into mono for a little part of the song and then bring it back into stereo for parts where you want the most emphasis and the most energy. And also something else that you probably have heard a lot of people do, a lot of professional mixing and mastering engineers do this. They automate the volume fader on the master. The whole song up until the last hook or the part of the song that you want to have the most impact. You have the volume down 1 or 2 dB. Very subtle, but just 1 or 2 dB. Have it lower than the end of your song. For me, it's the last hook. And you just have it jump up that ever so slight amount. And this in conjunction with automating the stereo separation just gives the last hook so much more impact and can really help to bring the track to a massive climax at the end. So I'm going to turn off these automations and the backing vocals for the last hook, and you're going to feel the difference.
This life is a game I've been destined to play. Know what more you expect me to say. This life manifested up till you came. Don't know what more I can say, but I feel your pain. Ayo. I don't know.
Now I'm going to turn all that back on.
This life is a game I've been destined to play. Know what more you expect me to say. This life manifested up till you came. Don't know what more I can say, but I feel your pain. Ayo. I don't know.
To me, that makes the world of difference. Of course, on the master, I have my regular mastering chain. The only difference is I've now got this Uline loudness meter for mastering. And basically what you want to be looking at is your integrated LUFS. This is basically for uploading to streaming services. You want this to be above -14 generally. This is a pretty rough guide because this can change all the time. But as a rough guideline, I like to have the loudness above -14. So yeah, that's pretty much the arrangement and the beat breakdown. Now I'm going to move into the recording session to give you a brief rundown of how I recorded the vocals. Okay, so this is the recording project. For my lead vocal chain, this is what I use to record 90% of my songs right now. This is subject to change as my sound develops. You can add stuff with it to make it more creative, but this is a really bare bones vocal chain. Firstly, I've got an auto tune. Retune speed at 19. A lower retune speed will make you sound more obviously auto-tuned, which I did have in my song Part of Me, which if you want to break down to that, let me know in the comments. But for most of this album, I recorded at around 20 retune speed to make it sound more human and more natural. But then I've got this really basic EQ cutting out all the low frequencies and a lot of the harsh high frequencies. Basically any of the frequencies that aren't needed for the vocal. Next, I've got another EQ. Now this is going to be really dependent on what mic you use. I'm recording on an AT2020 and I found I sounded really nasally when I was recording into this. So I did a big cut at 1000 Hertz. Boosted a lot of the high frequencies because that's what this mic is missing a lot of the time. Next, because this microphone is so dull, fresh air is your best friend. Really brightens it up. This for me brings the vocals so much clarity, makes it sound so much more professional up front, and does a lot of the heavy lifting. I did come to realize that this much high air makes it sound quite harsh, especially if you really listen to those high frequencies by themselves. So I would recommend bringing it down to about the high 50s, low 60s area. Or what I did for this album specifically is after I recorded it, I went into the mixing stage and I just cut out a lot of those pokey frequencies that were in the vocal. Next, I've got this SSQ EQ. I'm boosting some of the low frequencies to give the vocal a bit of body, boosting some low mids, cutting about 1.5 decibels at the high mids, and very slightly touching up high frequencies as well. Really accentuates that fresh air. And then finally, I told you it was really basic. We've got a compressor. Now this compressor is going absolutely ham. I really like the really compressed sound. I've got the knee at 100%. To be honest, I don't know exactly what this knee does. I always have it 100% because from what I can tell, it doesn't compress stuff to the same consistency all the time at 100%. So as a rule, I just have it at 100%. And my ratio is at 7.7 to 1. Now, future me would probably cringe at this when I know more about mixing, but this worked really well, just ramming my vocals into this to get a nice even level, as well as something else that a lot of engineers probably cringe at. I use the Focusrite 2i2 Skull interface. The gain is set for me talking and recording these videos, not for singing really loudly into it. So if you can hear, I'm not sure if OBS will pick it up. If I start talking really loudly, it starts to distort. And I actually really like that sound when I'm hitting really high notes or I'm trying to really like sing. Now, it wasn't all the time that I wanted this, so I did have to push the mic a little bit away from me at times where I wanted a cleaner sound. Yeah, that's the lead vocal. I've got it tracking to a reverb and delay send. Very standard settings. You can pause and take a look here if you want. Most important things to notice is the dry level on both are at 0 and the wet level is at 100%. This is very important for sends. And then for my backing vocals, I've got the exact same preset. The only difference is I'm routing it to the reverb and delay, but giving it a lot more juice. I'm reverbing it out more, giving it more delay to make it sound further back in the mix. And also the volume is lower to give it that sense of distance. Also, a lot of my backing for the last hook is doubled and then it's slightly offsetted from each other to give it that really wide effect, because these are also routed to different mixer tracks, which are panned left and right. And both of these are routed to the backing bus, which is then sent to the delay and reverb. And then for ad-libs, I don't have many on this song. In fact, I don't know if I actually have any. Oh yeah, that's an ad-lib. There's only a couple of those in the song, but I've got auto-tune on there with the same settings. I've got this EQ with a little bit of a tighter band, cutting more of the higher frequencies, which is most important if you're wanting background vocals to sound more in the back. And then a little alter boy to shift the formant down by 1 semitone. And yeah, that gives it that slightly different sound and make it stand out from the lead and the backing. But yeah, in terms of Kira's lead, I was pretty lazy and I thought it sounded great, so I didn't really worry about it. I just used the exact same preset that I used for my lead. I think I just tweaked the threshold of the compressor to make sure it was compressing it the same amount as it was my vocal. So yeah, that's how I recorded and made the beat for On Your Side. That's how I made the full track. This one took a while to record, so if you like the video, make sure you like the video, subscribe if you want to see more content, hit the bell notification bell if I next time I post a video. Let me know what song from the album you want to break down next. Thanks everyone for watching. This support means the world. Go stream it if you haven't already, and tell me what song's your favorite. DM me on Instagram. That's it. Stay safe, stay healthy. Much love. Catch you guys in the next video. And as always, I love you.
It's a game I've been destined to play. No, what more you expect me to say? It's like manifested, I built till you came. Don't know what more I can tell, but I feel your pain.